Jeremy Soule, the composer for Knights of the Old Republic, is often cited as one of the greats in video game music, and is also one of my favorite composers as well. His writing is very atmospheric, meaning that the melody of the piece is often subdued, though usually not removed entirely. This allows the pads, be it strings, brass, or choir, to become the focal point of the music. Today we'll be taking a look at Ahto City and see how Soule was tasked with creating a theme for a watery, politics-driven planet. An intriguing fact about the soundtrack as a whole is that Jeremy could only use a few sections of the orchestra to compose for at one time. This was due to the limitations of the MIDI system in the original Xbox. If you take a look at the soundtrack, you'll actually only find 2 or 3 sections of instruments paired together. A full orchestra simply wasn't possible. Soule often displays the ability to emotionally evoke the listener. He does this in a variety of ways, the first and foremost being a heavy amount of volume and velocity automation. Throughout Jeremy Soule's entire career, his signature style seems to revolve around these carefully placed changes in dynamics. If you are not sure what this all means, don't worry, I'll explain it in great detail in this song. Secondary, you'll almost always change key when transitioning from one section to the next. You'll find that to be true in this song as well, as every section indeed switches key. Third and lastly, he definitely puts an emphasis on the cello and bass. A song supported by strong bass gives off a more serious tone. One thing that strikes me as unbelievable is that the song is only 1.5 minutes long. Manon is one of the longer planets in the game, so the fact that this song repeats itself so often speaks volumes to the care Soule gave to the piece. On to the song itself, take note of all the automation work below. I do believe that Soule meticulously diagrams each automation for each instrument to give a realistic performance. If he doesn't diagram the automation, he at least adjusts the velocity via a modulation wheel when he's recording himself playing. Let's take a look at the instruments. We have the string family, the violins, violas, cello, and double bass, along with a choir as sort of a lead instrument that guides us along in the song. Next, the piano, harp, and vibes present melody and direction, as well as shine and shimmer. Finally, he also includes a wind chime, which is a perfect instrument to achieve a wondrous and mysterious vibe. Like we've discussed before, Soule only uses the string section along with a few other plucky instruments due to the Xbox limitations. He still manages to school other composers who think they need the entire orchestra to create an effective piece. And as a last note, I enjoy how this song alternates from the higher strings to the lower strings in each section. This, along with a new key change, creates interest and dynamics in the listening experience. Soule first establishes a melody that is presented in an interesting combination of harp and vibes. I like to think that this doubling pair evokes a more watery sound, which is seamless when set against the Manon backdrop. The melody writing is simplistic, but nevertheless effective. What I mean by simplistic is that it uses only the notes found in the D major scale. I do like how Soule changes the rhythm of these notes to keep the listener on their toes. The violins, violas, and choir all seem to mesh into one unit. The violins, while I don't think are vitally needed as the violas could carry the song without them, do give a lighter texture to support the violas. This section is focused on the mid-range, so the violas fit right in as the lead instrument, and the choir really gives a song a Waterworld type feeling, especially since it's drowned in so much reverb. Jeremy Soule certainly likes to change Jeremy Soule certainly likes the key. Jeremy Soule certainly likes to change key frequently. One of his favorite chords to use in the song is the tritone, which is right here for example. A tritone chord uses the minor fifth, in this case the F sharp, to the C, which gives off an almost evil tone. It is a great chord to use to produce tension, which then can be resolved in a variety of ways. Some last small touches are the way the choir rises up to the tritone chord, and these unnerving movements between the two notes in all the choirs and strings. So let's hear it all in one fashion. The melody this time switches from the harp and vibes to the piano and harp, and the melody this time is more mysterious and darker. One of my favorite additions to the song is the wind chimes, which are used in the orchestra to display a magical or grandiose feeling, and I think that is what Jeremy Soule is trying to capture. For the first chord in the cello and bass this time, we again see the tritone, which resolves to the fourth. This next chord is an inverted G sharp minor chord, which resolves again to the fourth, and then back again to the tritone. We'll see the payoff for this chord in the next section. As a final note, see the simplistic nature of the double bass. Often too much movement down low can quickly muddy a mix. We switch keys from G sharp to G major, which is a half step up. I often find that modulating by half steps produces a strong and unexpected switch in the music. The cello chord then switches to the G6 chord here, while still keeping the G in the double bass. And then interestingly, in the cello, in the next couple intervals, it creates tension by using a major second interval, followed here by this minor second interval. Keep note that the bass is playing a G the whole time. The whole phrase then resolves neatly back to the G6 chord. Both the harp and piano resort to octaves to increase the interest in the melody. Like before, notice the sort of random nature to the melody. There's no clear pattern you can pick at. I think this benefits the song though, because in a more atmospheric piece, especially one that will be repeated often, a hint of unpredictability can keep the listeners guessing on what's coming next. The harp then fills us in by scaling up the D major scale, starting on the B. If you watch my last video on Dearly Beloved from Kingdom Hearts, you can start to see that the harp is a fantastic transition instrument. Now all together. We once again alternate from the lower cellos and bass to the higher violins and violas. This is the more a cappella part of the song with only 3 instruments playing in tandem. The choir here is more prominent than before, so let's start there. Looking at the pattern visually here, you can start to see how the intervals seem to open up and become larger over time. The second half uses octave motion, while a single voice holds on the C note. Having one note held throughout unifies these chord progressions. The violins act as brighteners to section 3, with just touches of here and there to allow the violas to shine through. A technique I noticed that Soule uses a lot is slowly crescendoing a chord, and then after he crescendos that chord, he then increases the volume of the next chord to its near maximum. You can see it in the violins here. And one of my favorite techniques to use is to slowly walk down the scale of a key. This is what Soule is doing here in the violins. Let's play the whole section. This last section, section 2C, puts the focus back on the low-end strings, especially the cello. Much like in the section before in the choir, take note of the bass G that is held throughout the chord changes. I've noticed in many of Jeremy Soule's pieces that he likes to end his songs on a final chord that fades out. Particularly this chord, which feels unresolved, lends well when it loops back to the beginning of the song. The piano and harp octave combo returns to bring a more melody focus back to the music. You'll notice that this melody is almost exactly the same as the first section, but slightly altered halfway through. I think the reason the composer used a piano instead of returning to the vibes was to bring some variety when the piece loops. Time to play the song in full and take note of what we've discussed before. In section 1, especially the automation here and throughout the song, and then in section 2A, how the piano melody presents a more mysterious feeling. In the next section, the use of octaves in the piano and a more hopeful tone this time. In section 3, how each instrument, the violins, violas, and choir can be heard distinctly from one another. And then finally in section 2C, how Soule is not afraid to push the volume of the cello. Jeremy Soule's music in Knights of the Old Republic is incredibly evocative in capturing the emotion of the world in which it is given place. He himself states that he usually isn't given much material or game footage to look at. He makes sure, though, that he translates the mood correctly before finishing the completed piece. I think Soule's style, more than anything else, speaks to how important volume control is to music. Much like the art it is used with, music has to be living and breathing. It cannot be stagnant. The prime difference between good music and amazing music usually comes down to this factor. Thank you for watching and enjoying this analysis. I relished in having the opportunity to take apart the song Ahto City, and I hope I can show you the tips and tricks the great composers of the past have put into their songs. Thanks again, and have a noble day.